Hello, guys. Nice to see you, all of you here in the room. Welcome to the wine masterclass, which will be held by my friend and colleague from Decanter magazine, Claire Cox, and me. You know me probably if you are from Serbia and if you like wines, but whatever. My name is Igor Lukovic. I am the editor-in-chief of the Vino and Fino magazine and some other smaller magazines. And we are talking about today about wine discoveries from Serbia, and the Balkans from the Decanter magazine. So, Claire.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for the introduction, Igor. As Igor says, I'm at Decanter. I'm the special projects editor, and we've done a lot of collaborations over the last 2 years. And it's really exciting to share just some of those projects that Decanter has done to really bring these developing regions to the fore, because these are wines that are really exciting, as I hope you'll see today, with the really great selection of 8 that we have. And also to talk a bit about what Decanter is doing to really raise the profile of these regions. So I hope you enjoy the tasting. I hope it gives you a bit of a flavour of what these really exciting countries have to offer. And we'll crack on. So as I mentioned, over the last 2 years or so, we have done a lot of different projects. These have covered sponsored content and supplements, the Decanter World Wine Awards, where year on year we're seeing golds and silvers emerging from regions such as Serbia, North Macedonia, and Albania. Editorial content, where we've gone in depth with producer profiles, grape varieties, and interviews and much more for these countries. And panel tastings, such as the recent one which Igor took part in September at our Decanter offices in Paddington, looking at indigenous reds from this area. And you'll have to stay posted for the results, which are due in our January issue. And not least, of course, I hope some of you will have visited our stand. If not, there's still a chance. And we're in Hall 4, Stand 31. A few more. And a bit about the competition itself, because this is really where these wineries are starting to stand out. The Decanter World Wine Awards are by now into their 23rd edition. We get the best judges from all over the world, master of wine from the trade, master sommeliers who really know these regions inside out and bring our readers the very best that these regions have to offer. In recent years, Serbia, Macedonia, and Albania have really come to the fore, and this is really reflected in our selection today, which is a selection of gold and silver winners from the last couple of years. Over to Igor for a bit of a snapshot of the regions and the areas we're talking about in Serbia today.
Thank you. Thank you, Claire. So, I would like to add a few words about that Decanter part and about the cooperation, just to remind you, if you are from here and from this part, or if you are not, why the magazine and the competition is so important here in the Balkans and in Serbia. Because, you know, it's a fact that the Decanter is more influential wine magazine, at least in Europe, maybe in the world, but let's stick in Europe and in Asia probably. So that's the one thing. And the competition itself is the biggest, most prestigious, and actually really the most appreciated competition, wine competition in the world. So Decanter Award means something, and when you have that sticker, at least here in the Balkans, you are sure that you are going to sell your wine for the better price than it was. And you know, as a really young wine market, wine scene, yes, we do have an ancient history, but you know what happened in the second part of the 20th century and in the 90s. So no wine, actually, no good wine industry here. Just a few names that popped out at that time. And actually, with the beginning of the new century, we started again from scratch to rebuild our tradition and to say something about our varieties, terroirs, and so on. So at that moment, as a young and actually fragile wine scene with winemakers that were not actually sure where they are and where they are going, to have a recognition from such a magazine and such a competition was really important thing. And if you remember, some of you maybe, 2013, what happened for the first time, one wine, the first wine from Serbia, very first, this was Stari Zavet, 2011, Janko Winery Smederevo, won a gold at the decanter. And the regional trophy at that time, that doesn't exist anymore, regional trophies. So regional trophy at that time for the Bordeaux blends. And it was something everybody were talking about, and actually the winery became quite recognizable here in Serbia because of that. And after that, after several years, so first Prokupac blend from Temet Winery popped out as a gold. After that, we got a first platinum medal for Omnibus Lector from Erdevik. And every of those wines, they were bestsellers on the market at that moment because of the decanter, and still is like this. But what is the difference now? Every year, Serbia will win 9, 7, 11, 5 golds, whatever, some best of shows, some platinums, and so on. So just to add a few sentences. And sorry, because my English maybe is not so perfect, but you know, I have to be on the side with my dear colleague. So let's go further. Serbia has 22 wine regions and 77 wine districts at the moment. But today, because we do have just 8 wines, we'll be stick on 5 key areas for today's selection. So Subotica, which is absolutely on the north, on the border with Hungary, lowland, sandy soil, quite unique terroir, which can give us not just wonderful whites, but some particularly good red blends, especially when they are based on Merlot. Then Fruška Gora, quite low mountain, but really important wine region. I think in the Vojvodina part, the most important. And actually in Serbia, they have the biggest amount of registered winemakers and wineries there. And whole mountain, actually, the slopes are covered with vineyards and with wineries. So it's really important, and really important with the tradition and the identity of the winemaking in Serbia. And Fruška Gora nowadays care some indigenous variety, but as well is a home of some of the best Chardonnays in the country, and some other varieties shows really well there. And then Šumadija, really heart of Serbia, one of the biggest wine regions, and absolutely one of the most important wine regions in Serbia by the number of the wineries, on the second place behind Fruška Gora. And Šumadija with hills and slopes and a really huge diversity of the soils. So you can find there literally everything from Cambisol to Vertisol to limestone to red soil, rocky soil, you know. And because of such a huge diversity, you can have and you can see a lot of different styles of the same variety. But nowadays, Šumadija is recognized on the first place by the Sauvignon Blanc and by Merlot. In Serbia is a home of those 2 varieties. And then we have Mlava, which is not anyhow, I mean, by the number of the winemakers there, it's not an important region in Serbia. It has a wonderful history of winemaking, but unfortunately nowadays only one real winery is there. We have few more registered winemakers, one new face. I still didn't taste the wines, but winery Virtus is the only one real winery on the market that we know from that region. So we actually don't have a clues about how the region looks, because it's only one sample at the moment. So we don't have a wider picture, but in the future things will change. Probably the winery is really good, and they are producing some really good wines consistently, and we will talk about that a bit later. And at the end, Negotin, the Serbian Far East. So the 3-point, is that a word in English? Tromeđa?
Yeah, let's go there.
Okay, maybe. Yeah, okay, good. 3-point of Bulgaria, Romania, and Serbia. And that region actually is facing Wallachian Plain across the Danube in Romania. So warmth comes from there, from the plain. It's a hilly and mountainous region, but what's happening there? The weather is dry. Summers and autumns are quite long and dry. And sometimes the temperature is on the higher level during the day. But during the night, the cold breezes from the mountains comes down, cooling down the soil, cooling down the grapes, cooling down everything. And you do have ripeness, but with freshness every time. So no overcooking, no jamminess, and things like that. You can do that, of course, but it depends on the winemaker, on the position, and so on. So this is about Negotin, and we are going to taste the wines from those regions today.
That's great. Thanks, Igor. So you'll see also in the lineup, we've tried to have a range of both international varieties and some native varieties. And the whites will be sticking international, and the reds we've got a bit of a range ending on a Bordeaux-style blend. So hopefully it'll give you a bit of an overview of the sorts of styles winemakers are going for and how they're using these different varieties to really talk about their different vineyards, their soil types, and their exposition. So the moment we've all been waiting for, I hope everyone's thirsty too. So we're starting with a really beautiful traditional method, sparkling wine. I'm really pleased that this one turned up last minute because it's one of my favorites. And Igor, if you'd like to introduce a bit about the producer, where we are in Serbia?
Yes, with this winery, we are in Subotica region. So again, sandy soil, lowland, the real border with Hungary. So they are there. It's a Palić wine district around an shallow lake, which is a natural lake there. And if you had a chance to visit the winery, I think it's one of the most beautiful wine places in the country. They have a glorious building, you know, in that old traditional secessionistic or something, Art Nouveau actually, style. There, surrounded by the vineyards. Actually, this wine was their first release on the market, 2018. In your glasses, there is 2020, not 18. We changed the vintage because we couldn't find the bottles. But it's everything else is the same except the pH. pH is 3.12, which doesn't make actually any difference on that. They are producing wonderful Pinot Blanc, Chardonnay as well. And they have really well experienced winemaker in sparkling wines. And you know, the bubbles, sparkling wines are becoming the next big step for the Serbian wine industry. Actually, for, you know, all the Balkans, but especially here. Every month, actually, I hear something about some new wines, new sparkling wines from some old wineries, and some new wineries actually dedicated exclusively to the sparkling wines. And it seems that the local sparkling wines are in fashion nowadays, which is actually good. This was the really first label from the Zvonko Bogdan winery, and they made a great success at decanter competition.
Yeah, so this is an interesting vintage because, as with the 2018, it's 100% Chardonnay. Some vintages you see some Pinot Blanc blended in, which they are also very well known for. What decanter judges particularly liked about this was the autolytic quality. I think when you taste in the glass, you can taste some of that brioche, biscuity thyme on lees, but then you've got this beautiful fine seam of acidity, which is getting that freshness from the diurnal range that you find there, the influences from the lake, keeping that really fresh acidity. Hopefully it's kind of wet your palates and made you thirsty for more. I think a fact when I was speaking to the producer earlier today is that particularly stuck with me is the founder. Not only was he into his wines, but he's also a very well-known music lover, musician, trains horses for international events, and also carrier pigeons. So bear that in mind when you're drinking.
Yeah, Serbian people know him really, really well. He's a famous guy, but actually the main guy in the winery is a winemaker, not the.
But good to have a carrier pigeon.
For sure. And it's zero residual sugar. And what I really do like in this wine, the pressure in the bottle is not more than 4 atmospheres, never. That's the philosophy of Srđan Lukajić, of the winemaker. He's doing like that. He doesn't want that sharpness of the bubbles, especially when the wine is zero dosage. When you have high acidity, no sugar, and you have high pressure and bigger bubbles and more bubbles, it can be sometimes angular and sharp. This one is not. It's really precise, well-focused, smooth, and I like the, as Claire said already, I like the complexity and that bone-dry freshness at the same time.
So if we move on to the second wine in your flight, so we now have 3 still whites before we move to an orange. So this one here is Morava. We're looking at 100% Sauvignon Blanc.
No, sorry. It's 100% Morava variety.
Ah,
it's the local
mixed
variety.
up the
Sorry,
slide.
yeah.
Okay.
It's the mistake in the presentation, and it's my fault. Sorry,
Okay,
guys.
so 100% Morava.
It's 100% Morava.
Be followed by 100% Sauvignon Blanc. And Igor, you wanted to talk about this one.
So Morava is the local grape variety, actually, but it's not traditional one. It is. It became a traditional one, but there was a. For some reason, during the 60s and the 70s and 80s in the past century, the professors and, on the institutes and the university, they were trying to make some new varieties. They forgot to protect and to make a clonal selection of the real indigenous ones, but they were focused on this. We don't know why. But among all those wineries, there are tens of them, with some of them are good, some of them are not so, and so on. But the Morava show that this one can be kind of part of the local mosaic. On the first place, it has a really good name. It's Morava. It sounds like something local, and something real. It's not Dionys or Bacchus or something like that. We do have the varieties with such a names, and you cannot sell this really. Would you buy a wine where the grape variety is Dionys? No. It doesn't sound serious, but this one, Morava, sounds really good. And it's a region, it's a river, it's everything. It's connected with our history, and it has really complex DNA. The partly is Riesling, Sauvignon Blanc, Traminer, some Hungarian crosses, and so on. And the part of DNA actually comes from Vitis amorensis, and it's not PV variety because 85% and more of the genetics is from Vitis vinifera, but it has a small touch of Vitis amorensis, which makes this variety resistant. And it's really good for, climate changes, you don't have to spray and so on. All that story, really suitable for, biodynamic, organic, and that kind of production. But there is a character behind. There is acidity, there is body, there is structure, and there is recognizable nose. And I think at the moment this one is one of the best in Serbia, 100%. They know what they are doing. At the beginning, it was not like that with that grape variety in that winery. They were searching their style, but I think they found it.
And I think what I love about this wine is there's a real stone fruit peachiness. There's something slightly more rounded that actually, when you compare it with the Sauvignon Blanc, you don't have that linear note in the same way. It really fills your mouth. And I think for food pairings, that makes it quite an exciting possibility. The other interesting thing is just on the label front of the wine, and also the actual winery logos. So coming back to what Igor was saying earlier, they're really even down to their own motto, which is something along the lines of read the wine, taste the history. It's all about connecting back with the past, connecting back with the traditions of that time. And they've done some quite extensive research at the winery at the old Danube civilization manuscripts, and have taken some of those letters in their marketing and in their branding, as you can see with the lovely kind of upside down Z that you've got with their logo.
Yeah, I really like the wine now when I'm tasting it.
Sauvignon Blanc time, right?
Yeah, okay. We are now on the Sauvignon Blanc.
So I'm really excited about this one. I spent a good hour with the producer yesterday. Down from where we start is a really striking, eye-catching label, and comes from the actual children of the founder. So he's playing on the word Sauvignon here with the Sovi, and the Noah, I believe, is the Serbian for the firstborn or the firstborn child, he was saying. So it's like
actually,
a new
it's not
one.
quite usual name, and it's a son, not a daughter. Yeah.
And so each label that he brings out for the winery, he names after his children. So
Yes.
this is the first.
It is.
This one is really exciting. It's been quite a hard hitter in the UK. It's a really relatively young winery. It was founded in 2019. They planted their vineyards in 2017. And with the very first vintage of this wine, they won a Decanter Gold, which is not bad going. To the extent that then barrel makers, the Mercier of Bordeaux cognac fame, decided they wanted to be the barrel makers for this winery, and they came to Serbia, and they now make bespoke barrels for this particular wine, which is pretty cool.
Yes, it is. It is. I know that story about the barrels, and actually, you know, quite often when you do have first let's go back a bit. Remember that Choumadia and Sauvignon Blanc, it goes well in one sentence, because Choumadia is really good, some parts especially for the Sauvignon Blanc variety, and we do have the best Sauvignons in Serbia from Choumadia. Quite often, when they are fresher style, they are not well understood by, you know, by the people with a Western taste, let's say. They can be sharp and maybe a bit too leafy, but this one is not. And in this one, the oak using is really, really smart. You know, it's sometimes people are trying to just to put the Sauvignon Blanc in the barrels, and you will get that nectarine-driven smell and character, and they can become quite straightforward and simple. Maybe bolder, but you know, the taste is just and the character is just one. So, but not in this one. It's really just touched with or smartly oaked, let's say. You heard the story about this, and keep in mind now it's 25, and this wine is from 21, and we are talking about the Sauvignon Blanc. Look at the freshness, look at the complexity, look at the layers, and maybe it's not fair to say this here, but. And I hope that from that second winery, nobody is here. I'm talking about Silex. So I took a year ago this one and the Silex side by side, and I did a blind tasting with a group of the wine tasters. And this one won clearly. I am not saying nothing. Silex is a great wine, you know, but this one is even greatest. I really love this one. I think it was 96, not 95. I'm not sure, but maybe we can check. But doesn't matter. It was well scored at Decanter. And look at the acidity and the pH: 7.2, 3.28. 14% of alcohol, everything is there. And I'm quite curious to see this one after 5 years additionally.
And I think we wanted to mention as well the winemaker, no? Dragojevic.
Oh, yes.
And how he's one of the most awarded winemakers at Decanter now.
Yes, he is actually. Mladen Dragojevic is the winemaker for this wine, and it's an interesting fact. He's the most awarded, Decanter awarded Serbian winemaker, enologist. He won that regional trophy. He was the winemaker for that wine, 2013, and then several times for, I don't know, Reds, Kremen Kamen from Negotinska Krajina, Bukovski, and so this wine as well, some Chardonnays as well, and yeah, he's behind this one. Yeah. When the people from the side, you know, come to Serbia, and when he is introducing himself, he will say, "I'm the winemaker for Djokovic Winery," and everybody knows. Yeah.
So we're whistling through the whites. So we're now moving into Chardonnay. And what I'd really like to ask Igor about is why Chardonnay, why Fruška Gora, why does that work just so well?
But we are going back again to decanter. You know, at the beginning of that kind of Serbian wine renaissance, you know, when we started again to plant our vineyards and so on, Cabernet Sauvignon and Chardonnay they are still nowadays, but they were the main varieties. They were planted everywhere, and nobody knows actually how they are showing. Are the terroir is good for those varieties? But you know, they were popular. Everyone wanted to drink that instead of kind of Karlovački, Banatski, and so on. You know, Riesling in 1 liter bottle for making gemischt or spritzer. So everybody were stuck on those international varieties, and that happened on Fruška Gora mountain as well. So everybody were planting Chardonnay, and what happened after decade and a half, 2 decades, we realized, and they realized, that Fruška Gora is actually excellent terroir for Chardonnays. And nowadays, when you look at the scene, when you look at the shelf in the wine shop, you will see that the best actually Chardonnays comes from Fruška Gora in Serbia. And what happened else? Again, connected with the magazine, with Decanter, that first platinum medal for Serbian wine, a Serbian wine from Decanter, from the Decanter award competition, came for Omnibus Lector wine from the Erdevik winery in Fruška Gora. So that turns, you know, the light on, and we were start to think about what is going on. And I have to say that Larem from the Devrić winery is something new. We are talking about the style. This style is not so usual, but I think they're doing well. This. Yeah.
You've got a really interesting winemaking there. How they're using partial amphora, barrique, and stainless. They're really using all of that, both in the actual winemaking, but also in the aging. So they're being quite experimental, which is exciting.
Yes, and there is one more important thing about the soil. I have to ask you one thing. Can you imagine, or can you remember, where Lafarge cement factory, French-owned, has their factories in Europe? In Burgundy, in Piemonte, and Fruška Gora. That says something. What? There is a limestone, because they need it for cement. So, and particularly it's good for Chardonnay. So this vineyard actually lays really on the deep limestone soil with just a thin layer of Cambisol on top. And the winemaking is different with all those amphoras, and I'm actually quite amazed, especially with the minerality and with that kind of structure behind. It has a backbone. Yep.
So now we move to the orange wine in the flight, which is called Uncensored. And I think that's a great name for it, because everything it's doing is just trying to be a bit off-grid, a bit returning to how winemaking should be. So they don't filter, they don't fine. We're looking at a variety called Red Tramino, which does really well with skin maceration. So you've got this beautiful color in your glass, this kind of orangey gold. And they're all about just letting the wine do its thing. So they use natural yeasts in the ferment. They're not doing anything different. When you ask them, they just say, we do nothing else. We bottle, that's it. And I hope you can I think this is a good example, this sample that we have. Igor, you wanted to talk a bit about the variety itself and why it does quite well in Fruška Gora as well.
You know, this is probably the only one wine variety that we actually know the exact year when it comes at Fruška Gora region. It was the property owned by Odescalchi noble family from Italy connected with the Medicis, and they gave some popes in the history. And one of the guys, one of the Odescalchis, he brought 1887 the first plants of Traminer from Alto Adige to the western part of Fruška Gora. So Ilok and Erdevik now splitted by border between Serbia and Croatia, but that time one country, one is the same region still nowadays, because the wine varieties, they don't know nothing about the political borders, you know. So it's a long time that Traminer is here, few centuries, and it's really good for making orange wines, because for some reason, I don't know why, but it can keep the character. You can guess the variety every time, you know, which is not a case if you have, sometimes it is, but more often is not. When you have Chardonnay or Sauvignon Blanc and Riesling, you cannot find actually the variety behind. Here, you can. And this vintage was silver medal, 91 point, but a few years ago, this wine from the different vintage won gold at Decanter, you know. And
yeah, and it's just on the palate, it's got that lovely grip which you're getting from that skin maceration, the kind of rose, something you would look for in a Gewürztraminer, but a bit more savory. And I think in terms of food pairings, when we think about Serbian cuisine, actually even the really, Igor and I had dinner the other night and we had a really fatty pork. And actually something like that, it's got the savouriness, but it's got that lift of the floral notes, which would pair well with some of the cabbage ferments that we've had too. So I think it's a really exciting food wine, this one.
Wonderful.
Which leads us on to our reds. So here we are in a different region of Negotsin. Hope I've said that right, Igor.
Yep.
Which is, as I've heard, the warmest area, or one of the warmest areas in Serbia. So you get temperatures reaching up to 40 degrees, which is great for ripening the grapes. But if you look at the ABV here, we're not looking at 16%. We're looking at something that's 12.5, so it's pretty, restrained. And why is that? Well, you have a huge diurnal range there. So I was told by the winemaker, you definitely, even a Brit, would have to put a jumper on at night. So it shows you the kind of range, the freshness, and I think you find that in the acidity in this wine.
Yep. Just think about Charles Bukowski, the American writer. So his last name is literally the name of the wine. It's not connected anyway. There is a book of a hill from where the name is given to the wine. So Bukowski means from Book of a Hill, but is the same pronunciation like Charles Bukowski, writer. So producer is Mata Winery. So they are well known by their Cabernet Sauvignon. And what is Šumadija for Sauvignon Blanc, and Merlot, and maybe Fruška Gora for Chardonnay, Negotinska Krajina is for Cabernet Sauvignon. But what they did, they started to replant the old, ancient, indigenous, local grape varieties. They had actually the first Bagrina, and it's still quite rare here in Serbia, white variety. And they did the same, trying to recreate the traditional blend of Negotinska Krajina. So there was pre-phylloxera wine, which was named Negotinsko Crno, which means black from Negotin. It's not black, it's red, but you understand. In our language, you can say both. And it was made by the three varieties. In this one, Prokupac is dominant, so 68%. The rest is Ačinak, which is really old, really rare, and genetically connected with Prokupac's grape variety, with a more bolder, more structure and more color in the wine usually. And Četereška, which it's a local name for Kadarka, that grape variety from Hungary probably. It's quite usual. It's quite usual there, and yeah.
Yeah, and I think this is an interesting vintage, as the winemaker was saying yesterday, because their idea was always to add in the Kadaka as part of the blend. As Igor was saying, this was the historic blend. However, it's only been in recent years that they're happy enough with their vineyard to blend that in. So this is the first year that they are blending in this 7% of the Kadaka, which they were looking for all along. They said it's their kind of legacy wine, again, a tribute to history and the wines that were made pre-phylloxera. I think the other interesting facts just about the region itself, it had one of the earliest winemaking schools in Serbia in 1892. And this winemaking school was also, the labs behind that school were also very important with creating some of the strains of yeast that the wineries still use today.
Yeah, and we are, when we are having in mind that in the last 2-3 years, the consumption of the red wines globally, but in Serbia as well, is decreasing. So we have some really, numbers to worry about from the last year, especially from Bordeaux, for example, and so on. And when we are thinking about that, maybe the global taste is going to the less structure, less complicated, less body, and so on. This style and these varieties maybe can work in the future better than, I don't know, some bigger and bolder.
Yeah, because you've got that plushness of fruit, but there's still that acidity. And again, there's that gentle floral herbal quality too, which is just lifting it at the end. So it has that slightly lighter finish, which I think is appreciated.
Absolutely.
Well, you can't really forget this label, can you? So the Brits in the room might recognize the reference. We're looking at American Pie 1999. Can't really forget the label. This is something that really runs across this winemaker's range. They're quite distinctive, memorable labels. Let's go. Would you like to talk a bit about the winery?
All of these wines.
All of them, the whole range.
Yeah.
So, Igor, why are we getting Shiraz in Fruška Gora?
Actually, I don't know why, but we know that it shows good on Fruška Gora, and that there is a huge difference between western and the eastern part. If you look at the mountain, it's quite long. It's 80 kilometers, but and all around you have the vineyards. The northern part facing Danube, and which is not usual, a bit warmer than the southern side. Why is that? Because of the Danube. The heating comes from there as well, and the plain again is on the opposite side of the Danube, so heating is coming from there. Southern slopes are a bit cooler, and there is a huge difference between eastern and the western part. So from the western part, where this vineyard is near Krčedin, facing Danube, just actually above the Danube, they can have this kind of 50.5–16% of alcohol Shiraz, which reminds you on, it's turning on, Australia on first,
it's
like
New
that.
World in style.
Yes, and the name actually is Australian. I don't know. It's not. It's American movie.
Shiraz, not
American, yeah, Shiraz. Yes, the name of the variety. But when you do have the wines made out of the variety from the eastern part, the wines are almost every time quite often similar to, I don't know, middle price range of the lower parts of Northern Rhone, if you understand me. So Saint Joseph, maybe Gros Hermitage, like that, more earthy than fruity, more elegant and structured than plush and bold, if you understand me. So the winery actually itself is on the western part, just close to the Croatian border, but the vineyards are on the eastern side. So that's why this wine looks like this.
What Serbian cuisine would you pair with this? It's got a lovely spice, it's got that alcohol, but that rich sweetness of red fruit. What would you go with?
Yes, but good traditional barbecue can go well. And as well some international, good bloody steak. Sorry, vegetarians. But yeah, and just take a look on one thing. Look at the logo of the winery. Do you recognize those crossed keys and that funny umbrella? It's Pope's insignia. Why is that? Because Odescalchi family was connected with Medicis, And if you have a pope in your family tree, you were allowed to use pope's insignia on your coat of arms, family coat of arms. So, as they were the landlords of all that part, they put that logo on the town's coat of arms, Erdevik and Ilok. And that how that happened, that one winery in Serbia can use Pope's insignia as a logo.
So
and
it's
they're
a
doing that.
of the Pope of Serbia.
Yeah, yes, Chateau of the Pope of Serbia. Right, yeah. And you see the wine, it's really Stifler's mom, if you know what we are talking about. Jennifer Coolidge, if you can remember, and American Pie, the movie, so big and bold. So that's this one.
Hard act to follow, but we're concluding the tasting today on a Bordeaux blend. So this particular one, which I tried at the stand yesterday with the winemaker, is majoritively Cabernet Sauvignon. The Merlot is always a smaller percentage. I'm not entirely sure we've got the blend correct, but the Merlot is the smallest part, so it's just adding that touch of spice. It's what the winemaker was saying. They've got an absolutely huge range on their stand, so they produce everything from sparkling through to beautiful Rieslings, a lot of Bordeaux varieties, and even distillates, cognac styles. So it's definitely worth going and checking out their stand. This one, it's all about the winemaking, the French oak barriques. And I think what was quite interesting is with the winemaker, he was showing me, if you think about the latitude, you're actually on a quite similar latitude to Bordeaux. So
Yep.
he was saying, this is why. I was like, why are you Bordeaux blends? Why aren't you championing international variety? Why aren't you championing your local varieties? And he said, this is where it's meant to be. This is what really works for us, these international blends.
Yeah, and actually, if you didn't saw already that, at 2 was a award ceremony for this fair after Open Balkan wine trophy competition. So this one won a red trophy. So officially, the best wine of the fair of the competition for this year is this one, 2019. And Aleksandrovic Winery, they were really first, or among the 3 of first wineries that were the pioneers of new Serbian wine scene. Even they started in 90s with some rosés and then Sauvignon Blancs, and then they started with their reds, and this is their flagship red actually for a decade. Really well made. They're really precise in the winemaking, and everything is in the glass. You can understand why it is so well appreciated. Really complex, really deep, really fruity, really fresh, really everything.
Can you tell us a bit about Somalia itself and the region itself? Can you tell us a bit about where their vineyards are and why?
Yes, they have vineyards in the really heart of Šumadija region, near Topola town. There is a sorry, can I continue? Thank you. I have to concentrate. Sorry. So Vinča is the small village actually next to Topola town, and Vinča comes from vino. Vinča is the name that. So traditionally, that place was really surrounded by the vineyards and well known by the really good wines. We talked about Merlot, that the Šumadija region is really good terroir for Merlots, but for Cabernet as well, obviously, because we have some decent Cabernets from there. This is Bordeaux blend actually, but you can easily recognize that it's over-dominated by Cab. So yeah, and the winemaker Vlada Nikolic is one of the best in Serbia, of course. I told you that they were pioneers, and Aleksandrovic wines are those wines that you can count on them in every situation. If you don't know what to pick Aleksandrovic, and you cannot go wrong. Whatever, is it Chardonnay or Bubble or Bordeaux blend, Prokupac as well, they are always on the level, at least. They are always good, sometimes excellent, like in this case.
And if you can sweet talk the people at the stand, really try and get a glass of their top wine, which is 100% Cabernet, and it's absolutely beautiful. So try and, they've got a couple of bottles hidden, so don't take no for an answer. Okay, I think that's everything on our wines.
Yeah, that's all about the wines. And yeah.
So just linking back, so if there are any producers in the room, there's quite a lot of Decanter colleagues on hand and also at our stand. If anyone's interested in entering our awards, that's a bit of a plug. 2026 is open. We've got some cards at the front about details about how you could enroll and send your samples, so if you're interested in that. We have some examples at the front of recent projects that we've done with Serbia and with winemakers across the Balkans. And hopefully, if there's enough, you should all have a copy of the latest Decanter issue where we've got a focus on orange wines. I'm really sad this one didn't make the cut because I think that would have made a nice tie-in. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed today.
Yeah, I did. And I would like to add a few sentences more about Decanter. That, you know, from the really first edition of this fair, Decanter accepted to come here and to be our partner. And I really appreciate this because I think this is really, really important that someone with such a huge reputation came here to recognize us as a partner on the local and international market. So I hope that this will continue and that the Serbian and the Balkan wines will continue to be so good and so well recognized. Cheers. Thank you. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed.